Hello, and welcome. Tonight, we step gently into one of the most enchanting fairy tales ever told. There's nothing you need to do right now. Just settle in, breathe a little slower, and let the day drift away. If this space brings you comfort, you're always welcome to stay by liking the video or subscribing, but only if it truly feels right to you. I love knowing where these stories travel. So if you wish, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time the night has reached for you. Now lower the lights. Let a soft sound fill the room and allow yourself to be carried slowly, calmly into tonight's story. Domestic servants. Whither goest thou? To Walpa. I to Walpa, thou to Walpa, so together we'll go. Hast thou a man? What is his name? Cham. My man Cham, thy man Cham. I to Walpe, thou to Walpe, so together we'll go. Hast thou a child? How is he styled? Wild. My child, wild, thy child, wild. My man Cham, thy man Cham. I to Walpe, thou to Walpe, so together we'll go. Hast thou a cradle? How callest thou thy cradle? Hippodadle. My cradle, Hippodadle my child, wild thy child, wild my man, Cham thy man Cham. I to Walp, thou to Walp, so together we'll go. Hast thou also a drudge? What name has thy drudge? From thy work do not budge. My drudge, from thy work do not budge. My child, wild, thy child wild. My man, Cham, thy man. Cham. I to Walpe, thou to Walp. So together we'll go. The little folks' presents. A tailor and a goldsmith were traveling together, and one evening, when the sun had sunk behind the mountains, they heard the sound of distant music, which became more and more distinct. It sounded strange, but so pleasant that they forgot all their weariness and stepped quickly onwards. The moon had already arisen when they reached a hill on which they saw a crowd of little men and women who had taken each other's hands and were whirling round in the dance with the greatest pleasure and delight. They sang to it most charmingly, and that was the music which the travelers had heard. In the midst of them sat an old man who was rather taller than the rest. He wore a party-colored coat, and his iron-gray beard hung down over his breast. The two remained standing full of astonishment and watched the dance. The old man made a sign that they should enter, and the little folks willingly opened their circle. The goldsmith, who had a hump, and like all hunchbacks, was brave enough, stepped in. The tailor felt a little afraid at first, and held back, but when he saw how merrily all was going, he plucked up his courage and followed. The circle closed again directly, and the little folks went on singing and dancing with the wildest leaps. The old man, however, took a large knife which hung to his girdle, whetted it, and when it was sufficiently sharpened, he looked round at the strangers. They were terrified, but they had not much time for reflection. For the old man seized the goldsmith, and with the greatest speed shaved the hair of his head clean off. And then the same thing happened to the tailor. But their fear left them when, after he had finished his work, the old man clapped them both on the shoulder in a friendly manner, as much as to say they had behaved well, to let all that be done to them willingly and without any struggle. He pointed with his finger to a heap of coals which lay at one side, and signified to the travelers by his gestures that they were to fill their pockets with them. Both of them obeyed, although they did not know of what use the coals would be to them, and then they went on their way to seek a shelter for the night. When they had got into the valley, the clock of the neighboring monastery struck 12, and the song ceased. In a moment, all had vanished, and the hill lay in solitude in the moonlight. The two travelers found an inn and covered themselves up on their straw beds with their coats, but in their weariness forgot to take the coals out of them before doing so. A heavy weight on their limbs awakened them earlier than usual. They felt in the pockets and could not believe their eyes when they saw that they were not filled with coals, but with pure gold. Happily, too, the hair of their heads and beards was there again as thick as ever. They had now become rich folks, but the goldsmith, who in accordance with his greedy disposition had filled his pockets better, was as rich again as the tailor. A greedy man, even if he has much, still wishes to have more. So the goldsmith proposed to the tailor that they should wait another day and go out again in the evening in order to bring back still greater treasures from the old man on the hill. The tailor refused and said, "I have enough and am content. Now I shall be a master and marry my dear object, for so he called his sweetheart, and I am a happy man." But he stayed another day to please him. In the evening, the goldsmith hung a couple of bags over his shoulders, that he might be able to stow away a great deal, and took the road to the hill. He found, as on the night before, the little folks at their singing and dancing, and the old man again shaved him clean, and signed to him to take some coal away with him. He was not slow about sticking as much into his bags as would go went back quite delighted, and covered himself over with his coat. "Even if the gold does weigh heavily," said he, "I will gladly bear that." And at last he fell asleep with the sweet anticipation of waking in the morning an enormously rich man. When he opened his eyes, he got up in haste to examine his pockets. But how amazed he was when he drew nothing out of them but black coals, and that, howsoever often, he put his hands in them. The gold I got the night before is still there for me, thought he, and went and brought it out. But how shocked he was when he saw that it likewise had again turned into coal. He smote his forehead with his dusty black hand, and then he felt that his whole head was bald and smooth, as was also the place where his beard should have been. But his misfortunes were not yet over. He now remarked for the first time that in addition to the hump on his back, a second just as large had grown in front on his breast. Then he recognized the punishment of his greediness and began to weep aloud. The good tailor, who was wakened by this, comforted the unhappy fellow as well as he could, and said, "Thou hast been my comrade in my traveling time. Thou shalt stay with me and share in my wealth." He kept his word, but the poor goldsmith was obliged to carry the two humps as long as he lived, and to cover his bald head with a cap. Sweet Porridge. There was a poor but good little girl who lived alone with her mother, and they no longer had anything to eat. So the child went into the forest, and there an aged woman met her, who was aware of her sorrow, and presented her with a little pot, which, when she said, "Cook, little pot, cook," would cook good, sweet porridge. And when she said, "Stop, little pot," it ceased to cook. The girl took the pot home to her mother, and now they were freed from their poverty and hunger, and ate sweet porridge as often as they chose. Once on a time when the girl had gone out, her mother said, "Cook, little pot, cook." And it did cook, and she ate till she was satisfied, and then she wanted the pot to stop cooking, but did not know the word. So it went on cooking, and the porridge rose over the edge, and still it cooked on, until the kitchen and whole house were full, and then the next house, and then the whole street, just as if it wanted to satisfy the hunger of the whole world. And there was the greatest distress, but no one knew how to stop it. At last, when only one single house remained, the child came home and just said, "Stop, little pot." And it stopped and gave up cooking, and whosoever wished to return to the town had to eat his way back. The 12 Huntsmen. There was once a king's son who was betrothed to a maiden whom he loved very much. And when he was sitting beside her, and very happy news came that his father lay sick unto death, and desired to see him once again before his end. Then he said to his beloved, "I must now go and leave thee. I give thee a ring as a remembrance of me. When I am king, I will return and fetch thee." So he rode away, and when he reached his father, the latter was dangerously ill and near his death. he said to him, "Dear son, I wished to see thee once again. Before my end, promise me to marry as I wish." And he named a certain king's daughter who was to be his wife. The son was in such trouble that he did not think what he was doing, and said, "Yes, dear father, your will shall be done." And thereupon the king shut his eyes and died. When therefore the son had been proclaimed king, and the time of mourning was over, he was forced to keep the promise which he had given his father, and caused the king's daughter to be asked in marriage. And she was promised to him. His first betrothed heard of this and fretted so much about his faithlessness that she nearly died. Then her father said to her, "Dearest child, why art thou so sad? Thou shalt have whatsoever thou wilt." She thought for a moment and said, "Dear father, I wish for 11 girls exactly like myself in face, figure, and size." The father said, "If it be possible, thy desire shall be fulfilled." And he caused a search to be made in his whole kingdom until 11 young maidens were found, who exactly resembled his daughter in face, figure, and size. When they came to the king's daughter, she had 12 suits of huntsmen's clothes, made all alike, and the 11 maidens had to put on the huntsman's clothes, and she herself put on the 12th suit. Thereupon she took leave of her father, and rode away with them, and rode to the court of her former betrothed, whom she loved so dearly. Then she inquired if he required any huntsmen, and if he would take the whole of them into his service. The king looked at her and did not know her, but as they were such handsome fellows, he said, "Yes," and that he would willingly take them. And now they were the king's 12 huntsmen. The king, however, had a lion, which was a wondrous animal, for he knew all concealed and secret things. It came to pass that one evening he said to the king, "Thou thinkest thou hast 12 huntsmen?" "Yes," said the king, "they are 12 huntsmen." The lion continued, "Thou art mistaken, they are 12 girls." The king said, "That cannot be true. How wilt thou prove that to me?" "Oh, just let some peas be strewn in thy antechamber," answered the lion, "and then thou wilt soon see it. Men have a firm step, and when they walk over the peas, none of them stir, but girls trip and skip and drag their feet, and the peas roll about." The king was well pleased with the counsel, and caused the peas to be strewn. There was, however, a servant of the king's who favored the huntsmen, and when he heard that they were going to be put to this test, he went to them and repeated everything, and said, "The lion wants to make the king believe that you are girls." Then the king's daughter thanked him and said to her maidens, "Put on some strength and step firmly on the peas." So next morning, when the king had the 12 huntsmen called before him, and they came into the antechamber where the peas were lying. They stepped so firmly on them and had such a strong, sure walk that not one of the peas either rolled or stirred. Then they went away again, and the king said to the lion, "Thou hast lied to me. They walk just like men." The lion said, "They have got to know that they were going to be put to the test and have assumed some strength. Just let 12 spinning wheels be brought into the antechamber some day, and they will go to them and be pleased with them, and that is what no man would do." The king liked the advice and had the spinning wheels placed in the antechamber, but the servant who was well disposed to the huntsmen went to them and disclosed the project. Then, when they were alone, the king's daughter said to her 11 girls, "Put some constraint on yourselves, and do not look round at the spinning wheels." And next morning, when the king had his 12 huntsmen summoned, they went through the antechamber, and never once looked at the spinning wheels. Then the king again said to the lion, "Thou hast deceived me. They are men, for they have not looked at the spinning wheels." The lion replied, "They have learnt that they were going to be put to the test, and have restrained themselves." The king, however, would no longer believe the lion. The 12 huntsmen always followed the king to the chase, and his liking for them continually increased. Now it came to pass that once when they were out hunting, news came that the king's betrothed was approaching. When the true bride heard that it hurt her so much that her heart was almost broken, and she fell fainting to the ground. The king thought something had happened to his dear huntsman, ran up to him, wanted to help him, and drew his glove off. Then he saw the ring which he had given to his first bride, and when he looked in her face, he recognized her. Then his heart was so touched that he kissed her, and when she opened her eyes, he said, "Thou art mine, and I am thine, and no one in the world can alter that." He sent a messenger to the other bride and entreated her to return to her own kingdom, for he had a wife already, and a man who had just found an old dish did not require a new one. Thereupon the wedding was celebrated, and the lion was again taken into favor, because after all, he had told the truth. The Pink. There was once on a time a queen to whom God had given no children. Every morning she went into the garden and prayed to God in heaven to bestow on her a son or a daughter. Then an angel from heaven came to her and said, "Be at rest, thou shalt have a son with the power of wishing, so that whatsoever in the world he wishes for, that shall he have." Then she went to the king and told him the joyful tidings, and when the time was come, she gave birth to a son, and the king was filled with gladness. Every morning she went with the child to the garden, where the wild beasts were kept, and washed herself there in a clear stream. It happened once, when the child was a little older, that it was lying in her arms, and she fell asleep. Then came the old cook, who knew that the child had the power of wishing, and stole it away, and he took a hen and cut it in pieces, and dropped some of its blood on the queen's apron and on her dress. Then he carried the child away to a secret place where a nurse was obliged to suckle it. And he ran to the king and accused the queen of having allowed her child to be taken from her by the wild beasts. When the king saw the blood on her apron, he believed this fell into such a passion that he ordered a high tower to be built in which neither sun nor moon could be seen, and had his wife put into it and walled up. Here she was to stay for 7 years without meat or drink and die of hunger. But God sent 2 angels from heaven in the shape of white doves, which flew to her twice a day and carried her food until the 7 years were over. The cook, however, thought to himself, "If the child has the power of wishing, and I am here, he might very easily get me into trouble." So he left the palace and went to the boy who was already big enough to speak, and said to him, "Wish for a beautiful palace for thyself, with a garden, and all else that pertains to it." Scarcely were the words out of the boy's mouth when everything was there that he had wished for. After a while, the cook said to him, "It is not well for thee to be so alone. Wish for a pretty girl as a companion." Then the king's son wished for one, and she immediately stood before him and was more beautiful than any painter could have painted her. The 2 played together and loved each other with all their hearts, and the old cook went out hunting like a nobleman. The thought, however, occurred to him that the king's son might someday wish to be with his father, and thus bring him into great peril. So he went out and took the maiden aside and said, "Tonight, when the boy is asleep, go to his bed and plunge this knife into his heart, and bring me his heart and tongue. And if thou dost not do it, thou shalt lose thy life." Thereupon he went away, and when he returned next day, she had not done it, and said, "Why should I shed the blood of an innocent boy who has never harmed anyone?" The cook once more said, "If thou dost not do it, it shall cost thee thy own life." When he had gone away, she had a little hind brought to her, and ordered her to be killed, and took her heart and tongue, and laid them on a plate. And when she saw the old man coming, she said to the boy, "Lie down in thy bed, and draw the clothes over thee." Then the wicked wretch came in and said, "Where are the boy's heart and tongue?" The girl reached the plate to him, but the king's son threw off the quilt and said, "Thou old sinner, why didst thou want to kill me? Now will I pronounce thy sentence. Thou shalt become a black poodle, and have a gold collar round thy neck, and shalt eat burning coals till the flames burst forth from thy throat." And when he had spoken these words, the old man was changed into a poodle dog, and had a gold collar round his neck, and the cooks were ordered to bring up some live coals, and these he ate until the flames broke forth from his throat. The king's son remained there a short while longer, and he thought of his mother, and wondered if she were still alive. At length he said to the maiden, "I will go home to my own country. If thou wilt go with me, I will provide for thee." "Ah," she replied, "the way is so long, and what shall I do in a strange land where I am unknown?" As she did not seem quite willing, and as they could not be parted from each other, he wished that she might be changed into a beautiful pink, and took her with him. Then he went away to his own country, and the poodle had to run after him. He went to the tower in which his mother was confined, and as it was so high, he wished for a ladder which would reach up to the very top. Then he mounted up and looked inside, and cried, "Beloved mother, Lady Queen, are you still alive, or are you dead?" She answered, "I have just eaten, and am still satisfied," for she thought the angels were there. Said he, "I am your dear son, whom the wild beasts were said to have torn from your arms. But I am alive still, and will speedily deliver you." Then he descended again, and went to his father, and caused himself to be announced as a strange huntsman, and asked if he could give him a place. The king said yes, if he was skillful and could get game for him, he should come to him. But that deer had never taken up their quarters in any part of the district or country. Then the huntsman promised to procure as much game for him as he could possibly use at the royal table. So he summoned all the huntsmen together and bade them go out into the forest with him. And he went with them and made them form a great circle, open at one end, where he stationed himself and began to wish. 200 deer and Mordger came running inside the circle at once, and the huntsman shot them. Then they were all placed on 60 country carts and driven home to the king, and for once he was able to deck his table with game after having had none at all for years. Now the king felt great joy at this, and commanded that his entire household should eat with him next day, and made a great feast. When they were all assembled together, he said to the huntsman, "As thou art so clever, thou shalt sit by me." He replied, "Lord King, your Majesty, must excuse me. I am a poor huntsman." But the king insisted on it, and said, "Thou shalt sit by me," until he did it. Whilst he was sitting there, he thought of his wayward mother, and wished that one of the king's principal servants would begin to speak of her and would ask how it was faring with the queen in the tower, and if she were alive still or had perished. Hardly had he formed the wish than the marshal began and said, "Your Majesty, we live joyously here. But how is the queen living in the tower? Is she still alive, or has she died?" But the king replied, "She let my dear son be torn to pieces by wild beasts. I will not have her named." Then the huntsman arose and said, "Gracious Lord Father, she is alive still, and I am her son, and I was not carried away by wild beasts, but by that wretch, the old cook, who tore me from her arms when she was asleep and sprinkled her apron with the blood of a chicken." Thereupon he took the dog with the golden collar and said, "That is the wretch," and caused live coals to be brought, and these the dog was compelled to devour before the sight of all, until flames burst forth from its throat. On this, the huntsman asked the king if he would like to see the dog in his true shape, and wished him back into the form of the cook, in the which he stood immediately with his white apron and his knife by his side. When the king saw him, he fell into a passion and ordered him to be cast into the deepest dungeon. Then the huntsman spoke further and said, "Father, will you see the maiden who brought me up so tenderly, and who was afterwards to murder me, but did not do it, though her own life depended on it?" The king replied, "Yes, I would like to see her." The son said, "Most gracious Father, I will show her to you in the form of a beautiful flower." And he thrust his hand into his pocket and brought forth the pink and placed it on the royal table. And it was so beautiful that the king had never seen one to equal it. Then the son said, "Now will I show her to you in her own form," and wished that she might become a maiden, and she stood there looking so beautiful that no painter could have made her look more so. And the king sent 2 waiting maids and 2 attendants into the tower to fetch the queen and bring her to the royal table. But when she was led in, she ate nothing, and said, "The gracious and merciful God, who has supported me in the tower, will speedily deliver me." She lived 3 days more, and then died happily. And when she was buried, the 2 white doves, which had brought her food to the tower, and were angels of heaven, followed her body and seated themselves on her grave. The aged king ordered the cook to be torn in 4 pieces, but grief consumed the king's own heart, and he soon died. His son married the beautiful maiden whom he had brought with him as a flower in his pocket, and whether they are still alive or not is known to God. The Stolen Farthings. A father was one day sitting at dinner with his wife and his children, and a good friend who had come on a visit was with them. And as they thus sat, and it was striking 12 o'clock, the stranger saw the door open, and a very pale child, dressed in snow-white clothes, came in. It did not look around, and it did not speak, but went straight into the next room. Soon afterwards, it came back and went out at the door again in the same quiet manner. On the second and on the third day, it came also exactly in the same way. At last, the stranger asked the father, to whom the beautiful child that went into the next room every day at noon belonged. "I have never seen it," said he, neither did he know to whom it could belong. The next day, when it again came, the stranger pointed it out to the father, who, however, did not see it, and the mother and the children also all saw nothing. On this, the stranger got up, went to the room. Door opened it a little, and peeped in. Then he saw the child sitting on the ground, and digging, and seeking about industriously amongst the crevices between the boards of the floor. But when it saw the stranger, it disappeared. He now told what he had seen, and described the child exactly, and the mother recognized it, and said, "Ah, it is my dear child, who died a month ago." They took up the boards, and found 2 farthings, which the child had once received from its mother, that it might give them to a poor man. It, however, had thought, "Thou canst buy thyself a biscuit for that," and had kept the farthings and hidden them in the openings between the boards. And therefore it had had no rest in its grave, and had come every day at noon to seek for these farthings. The parents gave the money at once to a poor man, and after that the child was never seen again. The Glass Coffin. Let no one ever say that a poor tailor cannot do great things and win high honors. All that is needed is that he should go to the right smithy, and what is of most consequence, that he should have good luck. A civil adroit tailor's apprentice once went out traveling, and came into a great forest, and as he did not know the way, he lost himself. Night fell, and nothing was left for him to do but to seek a bed in this painful solitude. He might certainly have found a good bed on the soft moss, but the fear of wild beasts let him have no rest there, and at last he was forced to make up his mind to spend the night in a tree. He sought out a high oak, climbed up to the top of it, and thanked God that he had his goose with him, for otherwise the wind which blew over the top of the tree would have carried him away. After he had spent some hours in the darkness, not without fear and trembling, he saw at a very short distance the glimmer of a light, and as he thought that a human habitation might be there where he would be better off than on the branches of a tree, he got carefully down and went towards the light. It guided him to a small hut that was woven together of reeds and rushes. He knocked boldly. The door opened, and by the light which came forth, he saw a little hoary old man who wore a coat made of bits of colored stuff sewn together. "Who are you, and what do you want?" asked the man in a grumbling voice. "I am a poor tailor," he answered, "whom night has surprised here in the wilderness, and I earnestly beg you to take me into your hut until morning." "Go your way," replied the old man in a surly voice. "I will have nothing to do with runagates. Seek for yourself a shelter elsewhere." After these words, he was about to slip into his hut again, but the tailor held him so tightly by the corner of his coat and pleaded so piteously that the old man, who was not so ill-natured as he wished to appear, was at last softened and took him into the hut with him, where he gave him something to eat, and then pointed out to him a very good bed in a corner. The weary tailor needed no rocking, but slept sweetly till morning, but even then would not have thought of getting up if he had not been aroused by a great noise. A violent sound of screaming and roaring forced its way through the thin walls of the hut. The tailor, full of unwanted courage, jumped up, put his clothes on in haste, and hurried out. Then, close by the hut, he saw a great black bull and a beautiful stag, which were just preparing for a violent struggle. They rushed at each other with such extreme rage that the ground shook with their trampling, and the air resounded with their cries. For a long time it was uncertain which of the two would gain the victory. At length, the stag thrust his horns into his adversary's body, whereupon the bull fell to the earth with a terrific roar and was thoroughly dispatched by a few strokes from the stag. The tailor, who had watched the fight with astonishment, was still standing there motionless when the stag, in full career, bounded up to him, and before he could escape, caught him up on his great horns. He had not much time to collect his thoughts, for it went in a swift race over stock and stone, mountain and valley, wood and meadow. He held with both hands to the tops of the horns and resigned himself to his fate. It seemed, however, to him just as if he were flying away. At length, the stag stopped in front of a wall of rock and gently let the tailor down. The tailor, more dead than alive, required a longer time than that to come to himself. When he had in some degree recovered the stag, which had remained standing by him, pushed its horns with such force against a door which was in the rock that it sprang open. Flames of fire shot forth, after which followed a great smoke which hid the stag from his sight. The tailor did not know what to do or whither to turn in order to get out of this desert and back to human beings again. Whilst he was standing thus undecided, a voice sounded out of the rock, which cried to him, "Enter without fear, no evil shall befall you thee." He hesitated, but driven by a mysterious force. He obeyed the voice and went through the iron door into a large, spacious hall, whose ceiling, walls, and floor were made of shining, polished square stones, on each of which were cut letters which were unknown to him. He looked at everything full of admiration, and was on the point of going out again, when he once more heard the voice which said to him, "Step on the stone, which lies in the middle of the hall, and great good fortune awaits thee." His courage had already grown so great that he obeyed the order. The stone began to give way under his feet and sank slowly down into the depths. When it was once more firm, and the tailor looked round, he found himself in a hall which in size resembled the former. Here, however, there was more to look at and to admire. Hollow places were cut in the walls, in which stood vases of transparent glass, which were filled with colored spirit, or with a bluish vapor. On the floor of the hall, two great glass chests stood opposite to each other, which at once excited his curiosity. When he went to one of them, he saw inside it a handsome structure, like a castle surrounded by farm buildings, stables and barns, and a quantity of other good things. Everything was small, but exceedingly carefully and delicately made, and seemed to be cut out by a dexterous hand with the greatest exactitude. He might not have turned away his eyes from the consideration of this rarity for some time, if the voice had not once more made itself heard. It ordered him to turn round and look at the glass chest which was standing opposite. How his admiration increased when he saw therein a maiden of the greatest beauty. She lay as if asleep, and was wrapped in her long fair hair as in a precious mantle. Her eyes were closely shut, but the brightness of her complexion and a ribbon which her breathing moved to and fro left no doubt that she was alive. The tailor was looking at the beauty with beating heart when she suddenly opened her eyes and started up at the sight of him in joyful terror. "Just heaven," cried she, "my deliverance is at hand. Quick, quick, help me out of my prison. If thou pushest back the bolt of this glass coffin, then I shall be free." The tailor obeyed without delay, and she immediately raised up the glass lid, came out, and hastened into the corner of the hall, where she covered herself with a large cloak. Then she seated herself on a stone, ordered the young man to come to her, and after she had imprinted a friendly kiss on his lips, she said, "My long-desired deliverer, kind heaven has guided thee to me and put an end to my sorrows. On the self, same day when they end shall thy happiness begin. Thou art the husband chosen for me by heaven, and shalt pass thy life in unbroken joy, loved by me, and rich to overflowing in every earthly possession. Seat thyself and listen to the story of my life. I am the daughter of a rich count. My parents died when I was still in my tender youth, and recommended me in their last will to my elder brother, by whom I was brought up. We loved each other so tenderly, and were so alike in our way of thinking and our inclinations, that we both embraced the resolution never to marry, but to stay together to the end of our lives. In our house, there was no lack of company. Neighbors and friends visited us often, and we showed the greatest hospitality to everyone. So it came to pass one evening that a stranger came riding to our castle, and under pretext of not being able to get on to the next place, begged for shelter for the night. We granted his request with ready courtesy, and he entertained us in the most agreeable manner during supper, by conversation intermingled with stories. My brother liked the stranger so much that he begged him to spend a couple of days with us, to which, after some hesitation, he consented. We did not rise from table until late in the night. The stranger was shown to room, and I hastened, as I was tired, to lay my limbs in my soft bed. Hardly had I slept for a short time when the sound of faint and delightful music awoke me. As I could not conceive from whence it came, I wanted to summon my waiting maid, who slept in the next room. But to my astonishment, I found that speech was taken away from me by an unknown force. I felt as if a mountain were weighing down my breast, and was unable to make the very slightest sound. In the meantime, by the light of my night lamp, I saw the stranger enter my room through 2 doors, which were fast bolted. He came to me and said that by magic arts, which were at his command, he had caused the lovely music to sound in order to awaken me, and that he now forced his way through all fastenings with the intention of offering me his hand and heart. My repugnance to his magic arts was, however, so great that I vouchsafed him no answer. He remained for a time, standing without moving, apparently with the idea of waiting for a favorable decision. But as I continued to keep silence, he angrily declared he would revenge himself and find means to punish my pride, and left the room. I passed the night in the greatest disquietude, and only fell asleep towards morning. When I awoke, I hurried to my brother, but did not find him in his room, and the attendants told me that he had ridden forth with the stranger to the chase by daybreak. I at once suspected nothing good. I dressed myself quickly, ordered my palfrey to be saddled, and accompanied only by one servant, rode full gallop to the forest. The servant fell with his horse and could not follow me, for the horse had broken its foot. I pursued my way without halting, and in a few minutes I saw the stranger coming towards me with a beautiful stag, which he led by a cord. I asked him where he had left my brother, and how he had shown by this stag, out of whose great eyes I saw tears flowing. Instead of answering me, he began to laugh loudly. I fell into a great rage at this, pulled out a pistol, and discharged it at the monster. But the ball rebounded from his breast and went into my horse's head. I fell to the ground, and the stranger muttered some words which deprived me of consciousness. When I came to my senses again, I found myself in this underground cave in a glass coffin. The magician appeared once again and said he had changed my brother into a stag. My castle, with all that belonged to it, diminished in size. By his arts, he had shut up in the other glass chest, and my people, who were all turned into smoke, he had confined in glass bottles. He told me that if I would now comply with his wish, it was an easy thing for him to put everything back in its former state, as he had nothing to do but open the vessels, and everything would return once more to its natural form. I answered him as little as I had done the first time. He vanished and left me in my prison, in which a deep sleep came on me. Amongst the visions which passed before my eyes, that was the most comforting, in which a young man came and set me free. And when I opened my eyes today, I saw thee, and beheld my dream fulfilled. Help me to accomplish the other things which happened in those visions. The first is that we lift the glass chest in which my castle is enclosed onto that broad stone. As soon as the stone was laden, it began to rise up on high with the maiden and the young man, and mounted through the opening of the ceiling into the upper hall, from whence they then could easily reach the open air. Here the maiden opened the lid, and it was marvelous to behold how the castle, the houses and the farm buildings which were enclosed stretched themselves out and grew to their natural size with the greatest rapidity. After this, the maiden and the tailor returned to the cave beneath the earth, and had the vessels which were filled with smoke carried up by the stone. The maiden had scarcely opened the bottles when the blue smoke rushed out and changed itself into living men, in whom she recognized her servants and her people. Her joy was still more increased when her brother, who had killed the magician in the form of the bull, came out of the forest towards them in his human form. And on the self-same day, the maiden, in accordance with her promise, gave her hand at the altar to the lucky tailor. The 6 servants. In former times, there lived an aged queen who was a sorceress, and her daughter was the most beautiful maiden under the sun. The old woman, however, had no other thought than how to lure mankind to destruction. And when a wooer appeared, she said that whosoever wished to have her daughter must first perform a task or die. Many had been dazzled by the daughter's beauty and had actually risked this, but they never could accomplish what the old woman enjoined them to do. And then no mercy was shown. They had to kneel down, and their heads were struck off. A certain king's son, who had also heard of the maiden's beauty, said to his father, "Let me go there. I want to demand her in marriage." "Never," answered the king. "If you were to go, it would be going to your death." On this the son lay down and was sick unto death, and for 7 years he lay there, and no physician could heal him. When the father perceived that all hope was over, with a heavy heart, he said to him, "Go thither and try your luck, for I know no other means of curing you." When the son heard that, he rose from his bed and was well again, and joyfully set out on his way. And it came to pass that as he was riding across a heath, he saw from afar something like a great heap of hay lying on the ground. And when he drew nearer, he could see that it was the stomach of a man who had laid himself down there. But the stomach looked like a small mountain. When the fat man saw the traveler, he stood up and said, "If you are in need of anyone, take me into your service." The prince answered, "What can I do with such a great, big man?" "Oh," said the stout one, "this is nothing. When I stretch myself out well, I am 3,000 times fatter." "If that's the case," said the prince, "I can make use of thee. Come with me." So the stout one followed the prince, and after a while they found another man who was lying on the ground with his ear laid to the turf. "What art thou doing there?" asked the king's son. "I am listening," replied the man. "What art thou listening to so attentively?" "I am listening to what is just going on in the world, for nothing escapes my ears. I even hear the grass growing." "Tell me," said the prince, "what thou hearest at the court of the old queen, who has the beautiful daughter." Then he answered, "I hear the whizzing of the sword that is striking off a wooer's head." The king's son said, "I can make use of thee. Come with me." They went onwards, and then saw a pair of feet lying, and part of a pair of legs, but could not see the rest of the body. When they had walked on for a great distance, they came to the body, and at last to the head also. "Why," said the prince, "what a tall rascal thou art." "Oh," replied the tall one, "that is nothing at all yet. When I really stretch out my limbs, I am 3,000 times as tall and taller than the highest mountain on earth. I will gladly enter your service if you will take me." "Come with me," said the prince. "I can make use of thee." They went onwards and found a man sitting by the road who had bound up his eyes. The prince said to him, "Hast thou weak eyes, that thou canst not look at the light?" "No," replied the man, "but I must not remove the bandage, for whatsoever I look at with my eyes splits to pieces. My glance is so powerful. If you can use that, I shall be glad to serve you." "Come with me," replied the king's son. "I can make use of thee." They journeyed onwards and found a man who was lying in the hot sunshine, trembling and shivering all over his body, so that not a limb was still. "How canst thou shiver when the sun is shining so warm?" said the king's son. "Alack," replied the man, "I am of quite a different nature. The hotter it is, the colder I am, and the frost pierces through all my bones. And the colder it is, the hotter I am. In the midst of ice, I cannot endure the heat, nor in the midst of fire the cold." "Thou art a strange fellow," said the prince, "but if thou wilt enter my service, follow me." They traveled onwards and saw a man standing, who made a long neck and looked about him and could see over all the mountains. "What art thou looking at so eagerly?" said the king's son. The man replied, "I have such sharp eyes that I can see into every forest and field and hill and valley all over the world." The prince said, "Come with me if thou wilt, for I am still in want of such an one." And now the king's son and his 6 servants came to the town where the aged queen dwelt. He did not tell her who he was, but said, "If you will give me your beautiful daughter, I will perform any task you set me." The sorceress was delighted to get such a handsome youth as this into her net, and said, "I will set thee 3 tasks, and if thou art able to perform them all, thou shalt be husband and master of my daughter. What is the first to be? Thou shalt fetch me my ring, which I have dropped into the Red Sea." So the king's son went home to his servants and said, "The first task is not easy. A ring is to be got out of the Red Sea. Come find some way of doing it." Then the man with the sharp sight said, "I will see where it is lying," and looked down into the water and said, "It is sticking there on a pointed stone." The tall one carried them thither and said, "I would soon get it out if I could only see it." "Oh, is that all?" cried the stout one, and lay down and put his mouth to the water, on which all the waves fell into it, just as if it had been a whirlpool, and he drank up the whole sea till it was as dry as a meadow. The tall one stooped down a little and brought out the ring with his hand. Then the king's son rejoiced when he had the ring, and took it to the old queen. She was astonished and said, "Yes, it is the right ring. Thou hast safely performed the first task, but now comes the second. Dost thou see the meadow in front of my palace? 300 fat oxen are feeding there, and these must thou eat, skin, hair, bones, horns, and all. And down below, in my cellar, lie 300 casks of wine, and these thou must drink up as well. And if one hair of the oxen, or one little drop of the wine is left, thy life will be forfeited to me. May I invite no guests to this repast?" inquired the prince. "No dinner is good without some company." The old woman laughed maliciously and replied, "Thou mayest invite one for the sake of companionship, but no more." The king's son went to his servants and said to the stout one, "Thou shalt be my guest today, and shalt eat thy fill." Hereupon the stout one stretched himself out and ate the 300 oxen without leaving one single hair. And then he asked if he was to have nothing but his breakfast. He drank the wine straight from the casks without feeling any need of a glass, and he licked the last drop from his fingernails. When the meal was over, the prince went to the old woman and told her that the second task also was performed. She wondered at this and said, "No one has ever done so much before. But one task still remains." And she thought to herself, "Thou shalt not escape me, and wilt not keep thy head on thy shoulders. This night," said she, "I will bring my daughter to thee in thy chamber, and thou shalt put thine arms round her. But when you are sitting there together, beware of falling asleep. When 12 o'clock is striking, I will come, and if she is then no longer in thine arms, thou art lost." The prince thought, "The task is easy. I will most certainly keep my eyes open." Nevertheless, he called his servants, told them what the old woman had said, and remarked, "Who knows what treachery lurks behind this? Foresight is a good thing. Keep watch, and take care that the maiden does not go out of my room again." When night fell, the old woman came with her daughter and gave her into the princess's arms, and then the tall one wound himself round the two in a circle, and the stout one placed himself by the door so that no living creature could enter. There the two sat, and the maiden spake never a word, but the moon shone through the window on her face, and the prince could behold her wondrous beauty. He did nothing but gaze at her, and was filled with love and happiness, and his eyes never felt weary. This lasted until 11 o'clock, when the old woman cast such a spell over all of them that they fell asleep, and at the self-same moment the maiden was carried away. Then they all slept soundly until 11:45, when the magic lost its power, and all awoke again. "Oh, misery and misfortune," cried the prince. "Now I am lost." The faithful servants also began to lament, but the listener said, "Be quiet, I want to listen." Then he listened for an instant and said, "She is on a rock 300 leagues from hence, bewailing her fate. Thou alone, tall one, canst help her. If thou wilt stand up, thou wilt be there in a couple of steps." "Yes," answered the tall one, "but the one with the sharp eyes must go with me, that we may destroy the rock." Then the tall one took the one with bandaged eyes on his back, and in the twinkling of an eye they were on the enchanted rock. The tall one immediately took the bandage from the other's eyes, and he did but look round, and the rock shivered into 1,000 pieces. Then the tall one took the maiden in his arms, carried her back in a second, then fetched his companion with the same rapidity, and before it struck 12, they were all sitting as they had sat before, quite merrily and happily. When 12 struck, the age sorceress came stealing in with a malicious face, which seemed to say, "Now he is mine," for she believed that her daughter was on the rock 300 leagues off. But when she saw her in the prince's arms, she was alarmed and said, "Here is one who knows more than I do." She dared not make any opposition and was forced to give him her daughter. But she whispered in her ear, "It is a disgrace to thee to have to obey common people, and that thou art not allowed to choose a husband to thine own liking." On this, the proud heart of the maiden was filled with anger, and she meditated revenge. Next morning, she caused 300 great bundles of wood to be got together, and said to the prince that though the 3 tasks were performed, she would still not be his wife until someone was ready to seat himself in the midst of the wood and bear the fire. She thought that none of his servants would let themselves be burnt for him, and that out of love for her, he himself would place himself upon it, and then she would be free. But the servants said, "Every one of us has done something except the frosty one. He must set to work." And they put him in the middle of the pile and set fire to it. Then the fire began to burn, and burnt for 3 days, until all the wood was consumed. And when the flames had burnt out, the frosty one was standing amid the ashes, trembling like an aspen leaf, and saying, "I never felt such a frost during the whole course of my life. If it had lasted much longer, I should have been benumbed." As no other pretext was to be found, the beautiful maiden was now forced to take the unknown youth as a husband. But when they drove away to church, the old woman said, "I cannot endure the disgrace," and sent her warriors after them with orders to cut down all who opposed them and bring back her daughter. But the listener had sharpened his ears and heard the secret discourse of the old woman. "What shall we do?" said he to the stout one. But he knew what to do, and spat out once or twice behind the carriage some of the sea water which he had drunk, and a great sea arose in which the warriors were caught and drowned. When the sorceress perceived that she sent her mailed knights, but the listener heard the rattling of their armor, and undid the bandage from one eye of Sharp Eyes, who looked for a while rather fixedly at the enemy's troops, on which they all sprang to pieces, like glass. Then the youth and the maiden went on their way undisturbed, and when the two had been blessed in church, the 6 servants took leave, and said to their master, "Your wishes are now satisfied. You need us no longer. We will go our way and seek our fortunes." Half a league from the palace of the prince's father was a village near which a swineherd tended his herd. And when they came thither, the prince said to his wife, "Do you know who I really am? I am no prince, but a herder of swine, and the man who is there with that herd is my father. We two shall have to set to work also and help him." Then he alighted with her at the inn, and secretly told the innkeepers to take away her royal apparel during the night. So when she awoke in the morning, she had nothing to put on, and the innkeeper's wife gave her an old gown and a pair of worsted stockings, and at the same time seemed to consider it a great present, and said, "If it were not for the sake of your husband, I should have given you nothing at all." Then the princess believed that he really was a swineherd, and tended the herd with him, and thought to herself, "I have deserved this for my haughtiness and pride." This lasted for a week, and then she could endure it no longer, for she had sores on her feet. And now came a couple of people who asked if she knew who her husband was. "Yes," she answered, "he is a swineherd, and has just gone out with cords and rope to try to drive a little bargain." But they said, "Just come with us, and we will take you to him." And they took her up to the palace, and when she entered the hall, there stood her husband in kingly raiment. But she did not recognize him until he took her in his arms, kissed her, and said, "I suffered much for thee, and now thou, too, hast had to suffer for me." And then the wedding was celebrated, and he who has told you all this wishes that he too had been present at it. The Wolf and the Fox. The wolf had the fox with him, and whatsoever the wolf wished, that the fox was compelled to do, for he was the weaker, and he would gladly have been rid of his master. It chanced that once, as they were going through the forest, the wolf said, "Red Fox, get me something to eat, or else I will eat thee thyself." Then the fox answered, "I know a farmyard where there are 2 young lambs. If thou art inclined, we will fetch one of them." That suited the wolf, and they went thither, and the fox stole. The little lamb took it to the wolf and went away. The wolf devoured it, but was not satisfied with one. He wanted the other as well, and went to get it. As, however, he did it so awkwardly, the mother of the little lamb heard him and began to cry out terribly and to bleat, so that the farmer came running there. They found the wolf and beat him so mercilessly that he went to the fox, limping and howling. "Thou hast misled me finely," said he. "I wanted to fetch the other lamb, and the country folks surprised me and have beaten me to a jelly." The fox replied, "Why art thou such a glutton?" Next day they again went into the country, and the greedy wolf once more said, "Red fox, get me something to eat, or I will eat thee thyself." Then answered the fox, "I know a farmhouse where the wife is baking pancakes tonight. We will get some of them for ourselves." They went there, and the fox slipped round the house and peeped and sniffed about until he discovered where the dish was, and then drew down 6 pancakes and carried them to the wolf. "There is something for thee to eat," said he to him, and then went his way. The wolf swallowed down the pancakes in an instant and said, "They make one want more," and went thither and tore the whole dish down so that it broke in pieces. This made such a great noise that the woman came out, and when she saw the wolf, she called the people who hurried there and beat him as long as their sticks would hold together, till with 2 lame legs and howling loudly, he got back to the fox in the forest. "How abominably thou hast misled me," cried he. "The peasants caught me and tanned my skin for me." But the fox replied, "Why art thou such a glutton?" On the 3rd day, when they were out together, and the wolf could only limp along painfully, he again said, "Red fox, get me something to eat, or I will eat thee thyself." The fox answered, "I know a man who has been killing, and the salted meat is lying in a barrel in the cellar. We will get that." Said the wolf, "I will go when thou dost, that thou mayest help me if I am not able to get away." "I am willing," said the fox, and showed him the bypaths and ways by which at length they reached the cellar. There was meat in abundance, and the wolf attacked it instantly, and thought, "There is plenty of time before I need leave off." The fox liked it also, but looked about everywhere, and often ran to the hole by which they had come in, and tried if his body was still thin enough to slip through it. The wolf said, "Dear fox, tell me why thou art running here and there so much, and jumping in and out. I must see that no one is coming," replied the crafty fellow. "Don't eat too much." Then said the wolf, "I shall not leave until the barrel is empty." In the meantime, the farmer, who had heard the noise of the fox's jumping, came into the cellar. When the fox saw him, he was out of the hole at one bound. The wolf wanted to follow him, but he had made himself so fat with eating that he could no longer get through, but stuck fast. Then came the farmer with a cudgel and struck him dead, but the fox bounded into the forest, glad to be rid of the old glutton. The Fox and the Horse. A peasant had a faithful horse which had grown old and could do no more work, so his master would no longer give him anything to eat, and said, "I can certainly make no more use of thee, but still, I mean well by thee. If thou provest thyself still strong enough to bring me a lion here, I will maintain thee. But now take thyself away out of my stable." And with that, he chased him into the open country. The horse was sad and went to the forest to seek a little protection there from the weather. Then the foe met him and said, "Why dost thou hang thy head so, and go about all alone?" "Alas," replied the horse, "avarice and fidelity do not dwell together in one house. My master has forgotten what services I have performed for him for so many years, and because I can no longer plow well, he will give me no more food, and has driven me out." "Without giving thee a chance?" asked the fox. "The chance was a bad one. He said if I were still strong enough to bring him a lion, he would keep me. But he well knows that I cannot do that." The fox said, "I will help thee. Just lay thyself down, stretch thyself out, as if thou wert dead, and do not stir." The horse did as the fox desired, and the fox went to the lion who had his den not far off, and said, "A dead horse is lying outside. There, just come with me. Thou canst have a rich meal." The lion went with him, and when they were both standing by the horse, the fox said, "After all, it is not very comfortable for thee. Here I tell thee what I will fasten it to thee by the tail, and then thou canst drag it into thy cave and devour it in peace." This advice pleased the lion. He lay down, and in order that the fox might tie the horse fast to him, he kept quite quiet. But the fox tied the lion's legs together with the horse's tail, and twisted and fastened all so well and so strongly that no strength could break it. When he had finished his work, he tapped the horse on the shoulder and said, "Pull, white horse, pull." Then up sprang the horse at once and drew the lion away with him. The lion began to roar, so that all the birds in the forest flew out in terror. But the horse let him roar, and drew him, and dragged him over the country to his master's door. When the master saw the lion, he was of a better mind, and said to the horse, "Thou shalt stay with me, and fare well." And he gave him plenty to eat until he died. The Wonderful Musician. There was once a wonderful musician who went quite alone through a forest, and thought of all manner of things. And when nothing was left for him to think about, he said to himself, "Time is beginning to pass heavily with me here in the forest. I will fetch hither a good companion for myself." Then he took his fiddle from his back and played so that it echoed through the trees. It was not long before a wolf came trotting through the thicket towards him. "Ah, here is a wolf coming. I have no desire for him," said the musician. But the wolf came nearer and said to him, "Ah, dear musician, how beautifully thou dost play. I should like to learn that too." "It is soon learnt," the musician replied. "Thou hast only to do all that I bid thee." "Oh, musician," said the wolf, "I will obey thee as a scholar obeys his master." The musician bade him follow, and when they had gone part of the way together, they came to an old oak tree, which was hollow inside and cleft in the middle. "Look," said the musician, "if thou wilt learn to fiddle, put thy 4 paws into this crevice." The wolf obeyed, but the musician quickly picked up a stone, and with one blow wedged his 2 paws so fast that he was forced to stay there like a prisoner. "Stay there until I come back again," said the musician, and went his way. After a while, he again said to himself, "Time is beginning to pass heavily with me. Here in the forest, I will fetch hither another companion," and took his fiddle and again played in the forest. It was not long before a fox came creeping through the trees towards him. "Ah, there's a fox coming," said the musician. "I have no desire for him." The fox came up to him and said, "Oh, dear musician, how beautifully thou dost play. I should like to learn that too." "That is soon learnt," said the musician. "Thou hast only to do everything that I bid thee." "Oh, musician," then said the fox, "I will obey thee as a scholar obeys his master." "Follow me," said the musician, and when they had walked a part of the way, they came to a footpath with high bushes on both sides of it. There the musician stood still, and from one side bent a young hazel bush down to the ground, and put his foot on the top of it. Then he bent down a young tree from the other side as well, and said, "Now, little fox, if thou wilt learn something, give me thy left front paw." The fox obeyed, and the musician fastened his paw to the left bough. "Little fox," said he, "now reach me thy right paw." And he tied it to the right bough. When he had examined whether they were firm enough, he let go, and the bushes sprang up again, and jerked up the little fox so that it hung struggling in the air. "Wait there till I come back again," said the musician, and went his way. Again he said to himself, "Time is beginning to pass heavily with me here in the forest. I will fetch hither another companion. So he took his fiddle, and the sound echoed through the forest. Then a little hare came springing towards him. "Why, a hare is coming," said the musician. "I do not want him." "Ah, dear musician," said the hare, "how beautifully thou dost fiddle. I too should like to learn that." "That is soon learnt," said the musician. "Thou hast only to do everything that I bid thee." "O musician," replied the little hare, "I will obey thee as a scholar obeys his master." They went a part of the way together until they came to an open space in the forest where stood an aspen tree. The musician tied a long string round the little hare's neck, the other end of which he fastened to the tree. "Now briskly, little hare, run 20 times round the tree," cried the musician, and the little hare obeyed. And when it had run round 20 times, it had twisted the string 20 times round the trunk of the tree. And the little hare was caught, and let it pull and tug as it liked. It only made the string cut into its tender neck. "Wait there till I come back," said the musician, and went onwards. The wolf, in the meantime, had pushed and pulled and bitten at the stone, and had worked so long that he had set his feet at liberty and had drawn them once more out of the cleft. Full of anger and rage, he hurried after the musician and wanted to tear him to pieces. When the fox saw him running, he began to lament and cried with all his might, "Brother wolf, come to my help. The musician has betrayed me." The wolf drew down the little tree, bit the cord in two, and freed the fox, who went with him to take revenge on the musician. They found the tied-up hare, whom likewise they delivered, and then they all sought the enemy together. The musician had once more played his fiddle as he went on his way, and this time he had been more fortunate. The sound reached the ears of a poor woodcutter, who instantly, whether he would or no, gave up his work, and came with his hatchet under his arm to listen to the music. "At last comes the right companion," said the musician, "for I was seeking a human being and no wild beast." And he began and played so beautifully and delightfully that the poor man stood there as if bewitched, and his heart leaped with gladness. And as he thus stood, the wolf, the fox, and the hare came up, and he saw well that they had some evil design. So he raised his glittering axe and placed himself before the musician, as if to say, "Whoso wishes to touch him, let him beware, for he will have to do with me." Then the beasts were terrified and ran back into the forest. The musician, however, played once more to the man out of gratitude, and then went onwards. The poor boy in the grave. There was once a poor shepherd boy whose father and mother were dead, and he was placed by the authorities in the house of a rich man who was to feed him and bring him up. The man and his wife had, however, bad hearts and were greedy and anxious about their riches, and vexed whenever anyone put a morsel of their bread in his mouth. The poor young fellow might do what he liked. He got little to eat, but only so many blows the more. One day, he had to watch a hen and her chickens, but she ran through a quick-set hedge with them, and a hawk darted down instantly and carried her off through the air. The boy called, "Thief, thief, rascal," with all the strength of his body. But what good did that do? The hawk did not bring its prey back again. The man heard the noise and ran to the spot, and as soon as he saw that his hen was gone, he fell in a rage and gave the boy such a beating that he could not stir for 2 days. Then he had to take care of the chickens without the hen, but now his difficulty was greater, for one ran here and the other there. He thought he was doing a very wise thing when he tied them all together with a string, because then the hawk would not be able to steal any of them away from him. But he was very much mistaken. After 2 days worn out with running about and hunger, he fell asleep. The bird of prey came and seized one of the chickens, and as the others were tied fast to it, it carried them all off together, perched itself on a tree, and devoured them. The farmer was just coming home, and when he saw the misfortune, he got angry and beat the boy so unmercifully that he was forced to lie in bed for several days. When he was on his legs again, the farmer said to him, "Thou art too stupid for me. I cannot make a herdsman of thee. Thou must go as errand boy." Then he sent him to the judge, to whom he was to carry a basketful of grapes, and he gave him a letter as well. On the way, hunger and thirst tormented the unhappy boy so violently that he ate 2 of the bunches of grapes. He took the basket to the judge, but when the judge had read the letter and counted the bunches, he said, "2 clusters are wanting." The boy confessed quite honestly that, driven by hunger and thirst, he had devoured the 2 which were wanting. The judge wrote a letter to the farmer and asked for the same number of grapes again. These also the boy had to take to him with a letter. As he again was so extremely hungry and thirsty, he could not help it, and again ate 2 bunches. But first, he took the letter out of the basket, put it under a stone, and seated himself thereon in order that the letter might not see and betray him. The judge, however, again made him give an explanation about the missing bunches. "Ah," said the boy, "how have you learnt that? The letter could not know about it, for I put it under a stone before I did it." The judge could not help laughing at the boy's simplicity, and sent the man a letter, wherein he cautioned him to keep the poor boy better, and not let him want for meat and drink, and also that he was to teach him what was right and what was wrong. "I will soon show thee the difference," said the hard man. "If thou wilt eat, thou must work, and if thou dost anything wrong, thou shalt be quite sufficiently taught by blows." The next day, he set him a hard task. He was to chop 2 bundles of straw for food for the horses, and then the man threatened, "In 5 hours," said he, "I shall be back again, and if the straw is not cut to chaff, by that time I will beat thee until thou canst not move a limb." The farmer went with his wife, the manservant, and the girl to the yearly fair, and left nothing behind for the boy but a small bit of bread. The boy seated himself on the bench and began to work with all his might. As he got warm over it, he put his little coat off and threw it on the straw, in his terror lest he should not get done. In time, he kept constantly cutting, and in his haste, without noticing it, he chopped his little coat as well as the straw. He became aware of the misfortune too late. There was no repairing it. "Ah," cried he, "now all is over with me. The wicked man did not threaten me for nothing. If he comes back and sees what I have done, he will kill me. Rather than that, I will take my own life." The boy had once heard the farmer's wife say, "I have a pot with poison in it under my bed." She, however, had only said that to keep away greedy people, for there was honey in it. The boy crept under the bed, brought out the pot, and ate all that was in it. "I do not know," said he. "Folks say death is bitter, but it tastes very sweet to me. It is no wonder that the farmer's wife has so often longed for death." He seated himself in a little chair and was prepared to die. But instead of becoming weaker, he felt himself strengthened by the nourishing food. "It cannot have been poison," thought he. But the farmer once said there was a small bottle of poison for flies in the box in which he keeps his clothes. That no doubt will be the true poison and bring death to me. It was, however, no poison for flies, but Hungarian wine. The boy got out the bottle and emptied it. "This death tastes sweet too," said he. But shortly after, when the wine began to mount into his brain and stupefy him, he thought his end was drawing near. "I feel that I must die," said he. "I will go away to the churchyard and seek a grave." He staggered out, reached the churchyard, and laid himself in a newly dug grave. He lost his senses more and more. In the neighborhood was an inn where a wedding was being kept. When he heard the music, he fancied he was already in paradise, until at length, he lost all consciousness. The poor boy never awoke again, the heat of the strong wine and the cold night dew deprived him of life, and he remained in the grave in which he had laid himself. When the farmer heard the news of the boy's death, he was terrified and afraid of being brought to justice. Indeed, his distress took such a powerful hold of him that he fell fainting to the ground. His wife, who was standing on the hearth with a pan of hot fat, ran to him to help him. But the flames darted against the pan. The whole house caught fire. In a few hours, it lay in ashes, and the rest of the years they had to live, they passed in poverty and misery, tormented by the pangs of conscience. The three army surgeons. 3 army surgeons who thought they knew their art perfectly were traveling about the world, and they came to an inn where they wanted to pass the night. The host asked whence they came and whither they were going. "We are roaming about the world and practicing our art. Just show me for once in a way what you can do," said the host. Then the first said he would cut off his hand and put it on again early next morning. The second said he would tear out his heart and replace it next morning. The third said he would cut out his eyes and heal them again next morning. "If you can do that," said the innkeeper, "you have learned everything." They, however, had a salve with which they rubbed themselves, which joined parts together, and they carried the little bottle in which it was constantly with them. Then they cut the hand, heart, and eyes from their bodies, as they had said they would, and laid them all together on a plate, and gave it to the innkeeper. The innkeeper gave it to a servant who was to set it in the cupboard and take good care of it. The girl, however, had a lover in secret, who was a soldier. When, therefore, the innkeeper, the 3 army surgeons, and everyone else in the house were asleep, the soldier came and wanted something to eat. The girl opened the cupboard and brought him some food, and in her, love forgot to shut the cupboard door again. She seated herself at the table by her lover, and they chattered away together. While she sat so contentedly, there thinking of no ill luck, the cat came creeping in, found the cupboard open, took the hand and heart and eyes of the 3 army surgeons, and ran off with them. When the soldier had done eating, and the girl was taking away the things and going to shut the cupboard, she saw that the plate which the innkeeper had given her to take care of was empty. Then she said in a fright to her lover, "Ah, miserable girl, what shall I do? The hand is gone, the heart and the eyes are gone too. What will become of me in the morning?" "Be easy," said he. "I will help thee out of thy trouble. There is a thief hanging outside on the gallows. I will cut off his hand." "Which hand was it?" "The right one." Then the girl gave him a sharp knife, and he went and cut the poor sinner's right hand off and brought it to her. After this, he caught the cat and cut its eyes out, and now nothing but the heart was wanting. "Have you not been killing, and are not the dead pigs in the cellar?" said he. "Yes," said the girl. "That's well," said the soldier, and he went down and fetched a pig's heart. The girl placed all together on the plate and put it in the cupboard, and when after this her lover took leave of her, she went quietly to bed. In the morning, when the 3 army surgeons got up, they told the girl she was to bring them the plate on which the hand heart and eyes were lying. Then she brought it out of the cupboard, and the first fixed the thief's hand on and smeared it with his salve, and it grew to his arm directly. The second took the cat's eyes and put them in his own head. The third fixed the pig's heart firm in the place where his own had been, and the innkeeper stood by, admired their skill, and said he had never yet seen such a thing as that done, and would sing their praises and recommend them to everyone. Then they paid their bill and traveled farther. As they were on their way, the one with the pig's heart did not stay with them at all, but wherever there was a corner, he ran to it and rooted about in it with his nose as pigs do. The others wanted to hold him back by the tail of his coat, but that did no good. He tore himself loose and ran wherever the dirt was thickest. The second also behaved very strangely. He rubbed his eyes and said to the others, "Comrades, what is the matter? I don't see at all. Will one of you lead me so that I do not fall?" Then with difficulty they traveled on till evening, when they reached another inn. They went into the bar together, and there at a table in the corner sat a rich man counting money. The one with the thief's hand walked round about him, made a sudden movement twice with his arm, and at last, when the stranger turned away, he snatched at the pile of money and took a handful from it. One of them saw this and said, "Comrade, what art thou about? Thou must not steal shame on thee." "Eh?" said he, "but how can I stop myself? My hand twitches, and I am forced to snatch things, whether I will or not." After this, they lay down to sleep, and while they were lying there, it was so dark that no one could see his own hand. All at once, the one with the cat's eyes awoke, aroused the others, and said, "Brothers, just look up. Do you see the white mice running about there?" The 2 sat up, but could see nothing. Then said he, "Things are not right with us. We have not got back again what is ours. We must return to the innkeeper. He has deceived us." They went back, therefore, the next morning, and told the host they had not got what was their own again, that the first had a thief's hand, the second cat's eyes, and the third a pig's heart. The innkeeper said that the girl must be to blame for that, and was going to call her, but when she had seen the three coming, she had run out by the back door and not come back. Then the three said he must give them a great deal of money, or they would set his house on fire. He gave them what he had, and whatever he could get together, and the three went away with it. It was enough for the rest of their lives, but they would rather have had their own proper organs. The Master Thief. One day, an old man and his wife were sitting in front of a miserable house, resting a while from their work. Suddenly, a splendid carriage with 4 black horses came driving up, and a richly dressed man descended from it. The peasant stood up, went to the great man, and asked what he wanted, and in what way he could be useful to him. The stranger stretched out his hand to the old man and said, "I want nothing but to enjoy for once a country dish. Cook me some potatoes in the way you always have them, and then I will sit down at your table and eat them with pleasure." The peasant smiled and said, "You are a count, or a prince, or perhaps even a duke. Noble gentlemen often have such fancies, but you shall have your wish." The wife went into the kitchen and began to wash and rub the potatoes, and to make them into balls as they are eaten by the country folks. Whilst she was busy with this work, the peasant said to the stranger, "Come into my garden with me for a while. I have still something to do there." He had dug some holes in the garden and now wanted to plant some trees in them. "Have you no children?" asked the stranger, "who could help you with your work?" "No," answered the peasant. "I had a son. It is true, but it is long since he went out into the world. He was a ne'er-do-well, sharp and knowing, but he would learn nothing, and was full of bad tricks. At last, he ran away from me, and since then, I have heard nothing of him." The old man took a young tree, put it in a hole, drove in a post beside it, and when he had shoveled in some earth and had trampled it firmly down, he tied the stem of the tree above, below, and in the middle, fast to the post by a rope of straw. "But tell me," said the stranger, "why you don't tie that crooked, knotted tree which is lying in the corner, there bent down almost to the ground, to a post, also, that it may grow straight, as well as these." The old man smiled and said, "Sir, you speak according to your knowledge. It is easy to see that you are not familiar with gardening. That tree there is old and misshapen. No one can make it straight now. Trees must be trained while they are young. That is how it was with your son," said the stranger. "If you had trained him while he was still young, he would not have run away. Now he too must have grown hard and misshapen. Truly, it is a long time since he went away, replied the old man. "He must have changed." "Would you know him again if he were to come to you?" asked the stranger. "Hardly by his face," replied the peasant. "But he has a mark about him, a birthmark on his shoulder that looks like a bean." When he had said that, the stranger pulled off his coat, bared his shoulder, and showed the peasant the bean. "Good God!" cried the old man. "Thou art really my son," and love for his child stirred in his heart. "But," he added, "how canst thou be my son? Thou hast become a great lord, and livest in wealth and luxury. How hast thou contrived to do that?" "Ah, father," answered the son, "the young tree was bound to no post, and has grown crooked. Now it is too old, it will never be straight again. How have I got all that I have become a thief? But do not be alarmed, I am a master thief. For me there are neither locks nor bolts, whatsoever I desire is mine. Do not imagine that I steal like a common thief. I only take some of the superfluity of the rich. Poor people are safe. I would rather give to them than take anything from them. It is the same with anything which I can have without trouble, cunning, and dexterity. I never touch it." "Alas, my son," said the father, "it still does not please me. A thief is still a thief. I tell thee, it will end badly." He took him to his mother, and when she heard that was her son, she wept for joy. But when he told her that he had become a master thief, 2 streams flowed down over her face. At length she said, "Even if he has become a thief, he is still my son, and my eyes have beheld him once more." They sat down to table, and once again he ate with his parents the wretched food which he had not eaten for so long. The father said, "If our lord the Count up there in the castle learns who thou art, and what trade thou followest, he will not take thee in his arms, and cradle thee in them, as he did when he held thee at the font, but will cause thee to swing from a halter. Be easy, father, he will do me no harm, for I understand my trade. I will go to him myself this very day." When evening drew near, the master thief seated himself in his carriage and drove to the castle. The Count received him civilly, for he took him for a distinguished man. When, however, the stranger made himself known, the Count turned pale and was quite silent for some time. At length he said, "Thou art my godson, and on that account mercy shall take the place of justice, and I will deal leniently with thee. Since thou pridest thyself on being a master thief, I will put thy art to the proof. But if thou dost not stand the test, thou must marry the rope-maker's daughter, and the croaking of the raven must be thy music on the occasion." "Lord Count," answered the master thief, "think of 3 things as difficult as you like, and if I do not perform your tasks, do with me what you will." The Count reflected for some minutes, and then said, "Well then, in the first place, thou shalt steal the horse I keep, for my own riding out of the stable. In the next, thou shalt steal the sheet from beneath the bodies of my wife and myself when we are asleep, without our observing it, and the wedding ring of my wife as well. Thirdly, and lastly, thou shalt steal away out of the church the parson and clerk. Mark what I am saying, for thy life depends on it." The master thief went to the nearest town. There he bought the clothes of an old peasant woman and put them on. Then he stained his face brown and painted wrinkles on it as well, so that no one could have recognized him. Then he filled a small cask with old Hungary wine, in which was mixed a powerful sleeping drink. He put the cask in a basket, which he took on his back, and walked with slow and tottering steps to the Count's castle. It was already dark when he arrived. He sat down on a stone in the courtyard and began to cough like an asthmatic old woman, and to rub his hands as if he were cold. In front of the door of the stable, some soldiers were lying round a fire. One of them observed the woman and called out to her, "Come nearer, old mother, and warm thyself beside us. After all, thou hast no bed for the night, and must take one where thou canst find it." The old woman tottered up to them, begged them to lift the basket from her back, and sat down beside them at the fire. "What hast thou got in thy little cask, old lady?" asked one. "A good mouthful of wine," she answered. "I live by trade for money and fair words. I am quite ready to let you have a glass." "Let us have it here then," said the soldier. And when he had tasted one glass, he said, "When wine is good, I like another glass," and had another poured out for himself, and the rest followed his example. "Hallo, comrades," cried one of them to those who were in the stable. "Here is an old goody, who has wine that is as old as herself. Take a draught. It will warm your stomachs far better than our fire." The old woman carried her cask into the stable. One of the soldiers had seated himself on the saddled riding horse. Another held its bridle in his hand. A third had laid hold of its tail. She poured out as much as they wanted until the spring ran dry. It was not long before the bridle fell from the hand of the one, and he fell down and began to snore. The other left hold of the tail, lay down, and snored still louder. The one who was sitting in the saddle did remain sitting, but bent his head almost down to the horse's neck and slept and blew with his mouth like the bellows of a forge. The soldiers outside had already been asleep for a long time and were lying on the ground, motionless as if dead. When the master thief saw that he had succeeded, he gave the first a rope in his hand instead of the bridle, and the other, who had been holding the tail, a wisp of straw. But what was he to do with the one who was sitting on the horse's back? He did not want to throw him down, for he might have awakened and have uttered a cry. He had a good idea. He unbuckled the girths of the saddle, tied a couple of ropes, which were hanging to a ring on the wall, fast to the saddle, and drew the sleeping rider up into the air on it. Then he twisted the rope round the posts and made it fast. He soon unloosed the horse from the chain, but if he had ridden over the stony pavement of the yard, they would have heard the noise in the castle. So he wrapped the horse's hoofs in old rags, led him carefully out, leapt upon him, and galloped off. When day broke, the master galloped to the castle on the stolen horse. The count had just got up and was looking out of the window. "Good morning, Sir Count," he cried to him. "Here is the horse which I have got safely out of the stable. Just look how beautifully your soldiers are lying there sleeping, and if you will but go into the stable, you will see how comfortable your watchers have made it for themselves." The count could not help laughing. Then he said, "For once thou hast succeeded, but things won't go so well the second time. And I warn thee that if thou comest before me as a thief, I will handle thee as I would a thief." When the countess went to bed that night, she closed her hand with the wedding ring tightly together, and the count said, "All the doors are locked and bolted. I will keep awake and wait for the thief, but if he gets in by the window, I will shoot him." The master thief, however, went in the dark to the gallows, cut a poor sinner who was hanging there down from the halter, and carried him on his back to the castle. Then he set a ladder up to the bedroom, put the dead body on his shoulders, and began to climb up. When he had got so high that the head of the dead man showed at the window, the count, who was watching in his bed, fired a pistol at him, and immediately the master let the poor sinner fall down and hid himself in one corner. The night was sufficiently lighted by the moon for the master to see distinctly how the count got out of the window. On to the ladder, came down, carried the dead body into the garden, and began to dig a hole in which to lay it. "Now," thought the thief, "the favorable moment has come," stole nimbly out of his corner, and climbed up the ladder straight into the countess's bedroom. "Dear wife," he began in the count's voice, "the thief is dead, but after all, he is my godson, and has been more of a scapegrace than a villain. I will not put him to open shame. Besides, I am sorry for the parents. I will bury him myself before daybreak in the garden, that the thing may not be known. So give me the sheet. I will wrap up the body in it and bury him as a dog buries things by scratching." The countess gave him the sheet. "I tell you what," continued the thief, "I have a fit of magnanimity on me. Give me the ring too." The unhappy man risked his life for it, so he may take it with him into his grave. She would not gainsay the count, and although she did it unwillingly, she drew the ring from her finger and gave it to him. The thief made off with both these things and reached home safely before the count in the garden had finished his work of burying. What a long face the count did pull when the master came next morning and brought him the sheet and the ring. "Art thou a wizard," said he, "who has fetched thee out of the grave in which I myself laid thee and brought thee to life again?" "You did not bury me," said the thief, "but the poor sinner on the gallows," and he told him exactly how everything had happened, and the count was forced to own to him that he was a clever, crafty thief. "But thou hast not reached the end yet," he added. "Thou hast still to perform the third task, and if thou dost not succeed in that, all is of no use." The master smiled and returned no answer. When night had fallen, he went with a long sack on his back, a bundle under his arms, and a lantern in his hand to the village church. In the sack, he had some crabs, and in the bundle, short wax candles. He sat down in the churchyard, took out a crab, and stuck a wax candle on his back. Then he lighted the little light, put the crab on the ground, and let it creep about. He took a second out of the sack and treated it in the same way, and so on, until the last was out of the sack. Hereupon, he put on a long black garment that looked like a monk's cowl and stuck a gray beard on his chin. When at last he was quite unrecognizable, he took the sack in which the crabs had been, went into the church, and ascended the pulpit. The clock in the tower was just striking 12. When the last stroke had sounded, he cried with a loud and piercing voice, "Hearken, sinful men, the end of all things has come. The last day is at hand. Hearken, hearken. Whosoever wishes to go to heaven, with me must creep into the sack. I am Peter, who opens and shuts the gate of heaven. Behold, how the dead outside, there in the churchyard, are wandering about, collecting their bones. Come, come, and creep into the sack. The world is about to be destroyed." The cry echoed through the whole village. The parson and clerk, who lived nearest to the church, heard it first, and when they saw the lights which were moving about the churchyard, they observed that something unusual was going on, and went into the church. They listened to the sermon for a while, and then the clerk nudged the parson and said, "It would not be amiss if we were to use the opportunity together, and before the dawning of the last day, find an easy way of getting to heaven." "To tell the truth," answered the parson, "that is what I myself have been thinking. So, if you are inclined, we will set out on our way." "Yes," answered the clerk, "but you, the pastor, have the precedence I will follow." So the parson went first and ascended the pulpit where the master opened his sack. The parson crept in first, and then the clerk. The master immediately tied up the sack tightly, seized it by the middle, and dragged it down the pulpit steps. And whenever the heads of the two fools bumped against the steps, he cried, "We are going over the mountains." Then he drew them through the village in the same way, and when they were passing through puddles, he cried, "Now we are going through wet clouds." And when at last he was dragging them up the steps of the castle, he cried, "Now we are on the steps of heaven, and will soon be in the outer court." When he had got to the top, he pushed the sack into the pigeon house, and when the pigeons fluttered about, he said, "Hark, how glad the angels are, and how they are flapping their wings." Then he bolted the door upon them and went away. Next morning, he went to the count and told him that he had performed the third task also, and had carried the parson and clerk out of the church. "Where hast thou left them?" asked the Lord. "They are lying upstairs in a sack in the pigeon house, and imagine that they are in heaven." The count went up himself and convinced himself that the master had told the truth. When he had delivered the parson and clerk from their captivity, he said, "Thou art an arch-thief, and hast won thy wager. For once thou escapest with a whole skin, but see that thou leavest my land, for if ever thou settest foot on it again, thou mayest count on thy elevation to the gallows." The arch-thief took leave of his parents, once more went forth into the wide world, and no one has ever heard of him since.